everyone, and welcome back to the Academy Insider podcast. If you are a fan of Academy Insider, this is another one of these episodes that you're going to absolutely love, because we get to highlight all the cool things that can be the results of going to the Naval Academy, being an officer in the armed services, and all the opportunities that exist within the career field. And so today, I'm joined by Captain Suzanna Brugler, who is a Naval Academy graduate herself, and she's what we call a FAO, a Foreign Area Officer, FAO. She's currently stationed in Colombia, working and interfacing with the Colombia Navy, and these are the cool opportunities that exist. So if you're like, FAO, I've never heard of that, I have no idea what it is, then you're gonna love this episode, because we're gonna highlight what a FAO is, what they do, the training process they go through, from language training to cultural immersion, to the jobs that they can do, what that means for their career and life, and just all of the above. It's awesome. And Suzanna's the best. I'm telling you right now, you're going to love her energy. She's great at explaining and teaching what she does and highlighting all of the incredible opportunities that exist within the FAO program. So take a listen. Let me know if you have any questions. You can always shoot them to me and we'll get them answered. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy the episode. Enjoy the listen. Thank you so much and have a good day. The Academy Insider podcast is sponsored by the Vermeer Group, a residential real estate company that serves the United States Naval Academy community and other select clientele in both California and Texas. If I can ever answer a real estate related question for you or connect you with a trusted Academy affiliated agent in the market which you're in, please reach out to me directly at grant@thevermeergroup.com. You can also reach out to me on my LinkedIn page, Grant Vermeer, and I'd be happy to respond to you there. Thank you so much. And now let's get back to the episode. All right, hey everyone, and welcome back to the Academy Insider podcast. Suzanna, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I'm so excited to cover what I think is going to be a really interesting topic that a lot of people likely don't know about, which is the Foreign Area Officer Program. But before we get there, do you mind giving us a little bit of background about where you're from, how you ended up at the Naval Academy, a little bit about your career in the Navy, and now currently where you're at taking this interview, quite literally from Bogota, Colombia?
Yes. Well, Grant, thank you so much for inviting me to be on your podcast. I've been following you for several months now, and I feel honored to be here. So thank you again. Yes, I am an Academy grad. I graduated in 1998, so I'm probably an old timer for you, although you have had a couple of old timers on. I got interested in the Naval Academy because my parents are both educators,
Mhm.
and they went on a recruiter's visit to the Naval Academy. My dad was teaching high school. My mother was a guidance counselor at the time. And I was in
Yeah.
seventh grade. I was very impressionable. And I'm from a small town in Ohio. It's a small town called Defiance of Northwest Ohio. So when they came home from Annapolis and they told seventh grade Suzanna Brugler about the Naval Academy, they had described it to me like it was summer camp. So I was I was intrigued, and they talked about the
Mhm.
leadership potential, the leadership opportunities. They talked about serving in the Navy, all of these things that were brand new concepts to me because I'm from Midtown America. I'm from
Mhm.
a place where there is no Navy. So
Sure.
yeah, I found it intriguing, and I was very curious. So it was something that I actually had been working toward, and sure enough, by the time I had graduated from high school, I had a rather unique entry. Well, not completely unique, but a different entry to the Naval Academy. I was first a foundation student. And I know you've
Okay.
had NAP students. I'm not sure if you've had
Mhm.
foundation students, but
We haven't done the foundation student yet, but I'm
oh my
excited
gosh.
to dive deep into that in another episode.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
very cool.
It's a wonderful program where if you're maybe academically qualified, but you could bone up on a couple of subjects, but not necessarily pegged for NAPS, for the Naval Academy
Sure.
Prep School in Newport. They have an alternate venue or an alternate means to get into the Naval Academy, and that is the foundation program. A lot of
Yeah.
athletes, if you're in kind of
Sure.
athletics, like maybe sailing or crew, or
Mhm.
I know a lot of football players tend to go to naps, but anyway, so that was an opportunity that was offered to me, and I jumped at it. I took it in a heartbeat. And so
Yeah.
I went to the Perkiomen School, which is a small prep school in Pennsburg, Pennsylvania, and I was a postgraduate student there.
Yeah.
And after I graduated from that year of postgraduate year, then I went to the Naval Academy. So
And
that's
and how was your parents' self-described summer camp? How was
oh
how
my
was
gosh,
summer
yeah,
for you
yeah.
after being advertised
I
as summer camp?
I think maybe after like 1 hour of induction day of I Day, I quickly realized that they really had a warped sense of what summer camp was, if that was what summer camp was. They thought it was like, no, but Yeah, it was, my years at the Naval Academy. So this was in the summer of 1994, and women had not yet attended the service academies 20 years yet. So
Mhm.
I really feel like I had kind of a bridge generation where we kind of went from, I mean, I think there were 14% women who were there when I was there. And I understand now there's maybe closer to 30%.
30.
So
Yeah.
it really was an environment, a brand new environment for me. I was not used to being such a minority. So that was a real adjustment. It was, yeah, I mean, it ended up in the end being, because I persevered like the rest of us. I think a lot of people that you've had on your podcast say, well, everybody else was doing the same thing. So, I was able to hang in there. And that's really what it was like for me too. It was no different.
Absolutely.
The
And you
people.
commissioned Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry,
no,
I
no,
cut
I
you off.
just said that, like, my shipmates, my classmates from the class of 1998, that's how we got through, is that we had each
Yeah.
other.
No, 100%. And so you make it through with the class of 98 and then you commission into what community?
Yeah, I became a surface warfare officer. And
Okay.
interestingly enough, I was really interested. I knew by then that I was interested in becoming a public affairs officer. And I was an English major at the Naval Academy. I was a Spanish minor, and I had done an internship while I was a midshipman. One summer, I had done an internship at the public affairs officer at the Naval Academy. And so when I entered the Naval Academy, I had no idea. I told you I was from a small town in Ohio, I had no idea what the options in the Navy were like for service. So I was really fortunate because I had actually a military English instructor who said, Susanna, you might be a good candidate to, because he knew that I wasn't, his name was Lieutenant Blake Dorr. He knew
Okay.
that I was kind of unsure what I was going to do when it was time to service select. And he said, well,
Sure.
there's this community called the public affairs community. And so he said, would you be interested in trying this internship? And I said yes. So, for the parents out there, for the midshipmen candidates out there, the great thing about the Naval Academy is that there's so many people who look after you and are helping to guide you. There's so many mentors there. It's really just an incredible environment to meet new people and people who are genuinely interested in your well-being and want to see you succeed and will help you do that.
Yeah. No, 100%. And so how was your time as a swell?
Yeah.
Did you
Okay.
enjoy being a swell before that transfer?
Yeah, so I forgot about that. Well, and being a SWO, I mean, while I really wanted to be a public affairs officer, but I will tell you, being a surface warfare officer for my entire career up until today is
Mhm.
the foundation of who I am as a leader, who I am as a naval officer. It was so vital to my success today. So I do want to stress that. So the surface warfare officer community selected me. That's how I describe it, because there really was no other. I mean, I wasn't interested in flying.
Sure.
Um, I women couldn't serve on submarines then.
Mhm.
So it was surface warfare officer, and I was of the mindset, well, if I'm going to do something, I knew my goal was to lateral transfer to public affairs. But if I thought, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to go big or go home. So
Mhm.
I selected a cruiser out of Yokosuka, Japan. I was on USS Mobile Bay, CG-53.
Mhm.
I think she just decommissioned a year ago. But yeah, I was the first lieutenant. I was the fourth woman to report to that ship in the spring of
Mhm.
1999.
Wow.
So it was probably the hardest 2 years of my life. I'm not gonna, but again, Grant, when you're talking to me, I've reluctantly accepted that I'm a dinosaur now in the Navy. Even though I don't feel like it, I definitely don't feel like I'm a dinosaur, but I know that I am. I mean, this was back when women were first
Mhm.
integrating our combatant platforms. I was the
Sure.
fourth, and for
Mhm.
an entire year, I was one of four women. And then after that first year, we integrated the crew, so the enlisted personnel. And
Mhm.
once we did that, we brought aboard, I don't know, between 20 and 30, I don't know the exact number, but it made life on board as one of the women just much easier because
Mhm.
that microscope wasn't only on the four
Sure.
officers that happened to be just selected to start the integration.
Yeah, no, 100%. And you eventually make your shift to becoming a PAO
Yes,
and then you get out and enter into the reserves.
yes,
So what was that process of getting out of the reserves and then kind of shifting almost into again what we'll say is like the main emphasis of this episode, which is the FAO program. How
yes.
did you go from being a reservist to back active duty doing what you're doing now as a foreign area officer?
Yeah. So I served as a public affairs officer. I lateral transferred after my first division officer on my ship.
Yeah.
And I had a rather successful public affairs career. And I served for about, I think, 12 and a half years at the juncture when I had decided to leave active duty and to go into the reserves. Part of the reason I think I was in my early 30s and I definitely had, some different things that I had wanted to accomplish in my life. One of them was to learn a foreign language. And
Mm,
so what I did when I left active duty was I followed an Olmsted scholar to Cadiz, Spain. And I lived in Spain for a year as a student.
mm,
So I tell people I sort of developed a homespun Olmsted program. I found a way to live in Spain, to take classes at the university,
mm,
and I started my reserve career. And during that time, I was the Africa Partnership Station public affairs officer in my reserve opportunities. So with the year that I lived in Cadiz, I spent about 2.5 months traveling in Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique, Mauritius. So that was on the east coast of Spain, or I'm sorry, of Africa. And that's kind of what really began the transition for me to really start thinking of foreign area officer as an opportunity, as something that I really kind of wanted to pursue.
yeah.
And unfortunately, at that time, there was not yet a reserve foreign area officer program. So I thought, oh, great. I just left the active duty where they do have a foreign area officer program, and I'm a
Sure.
reservist. But I knew that the Navy was trying to develop a reserve foreign area community.
Hmm.
And so, sure enough, fast forward maybe 5 years to 2016, 2017, the Navy had indeed stood up or was starting to stand up a foreign area officer reserve community. And
Hmm.
they held two boards over the course of 2 years. I didn't get selected the first board, but I did get selected the second board. So I'm
Okay.
one of the first reservists who started to build what's now a rather robust program in the Navy Reserve Foreign Area Officer community. So really
So
proud of that.
yeah, so cool. And when we reference the foreign area officer in general and program,
Yes.
what is it? Do you mind giving us a high level overview? Again, we use these terms, right? We talk about a surface warfare officer, you're on a ship. We talk about public affairs officer, you're out there controlling messaging and media and communication, both internally and externally, right?
Yes.
What's a foreign area officer and what do they do? Like what's the program?
Well, that's a great question because it's a very I would say a rather niche area, but it's a
Mhm.
very important area. So
Yeah.
foreign area officers, or are also referred to as FAOs. We're the Navy's globally embedded strategic operators. We develop
Mhm.
and lead integrated plans and international operations to deliver strategic effects. So yeah, that sounds like a lot of blah blah blah. What do you really do? Well, FAOs live downrange, and we work directly with our partner nations. We have three lines of effort. The first one is the Defense Attaché Service. The second
Okay.
one is the Security Cooperation Enterprise. And the third one is Fleet and Major Staff. So I'll go over those three in just a moment. So Defense Attaché Service, we serve as attachés around the world.
Mhm.
And what attachés are they're basically accredited diplomats that lead in policy and strategy and information. So they
Mhm.
work with US country teams. They sometimes work or they do work out of US embassies. And
Mhm.
if you ever are, at an event and you see somebody who's wearing this really large epaulet, like really big, not a flag,
The aid, yeah,
that
not the
right,
flag
but
aid.
a
Yeah,
big
one.
one. Those are
Mhm.
attachés.
Okay.
So yeah, that's a very unique opportunity to represent the United States around the
Sure.
world.
Mhm.
And if you're anything like me, it's exciting, it's adventurous, it
Yeah.
is it, it's I'm so proud of what I do because I get to
Mhm.
represent my country in foreign countries, and I just think that's the coolest thing. So that kind of covers really the information and the communications environment on a deeply
Yeah.
personal level. That's what attachés do, and
Mhm.
specifically working with our partner nations.
Mhm.
Security cooperation is actually what I do right now. I'm the U.S. Naval Mission Chief to Bogota, Colombia. So I'm in charge of an office of about 15 people. In that office, I have three officers. I have one Marine Corps officer who is my deputy. I have a Coast Guard liaison officer, and I have an O4 who is the maritime operations planner. And what security cooperation is. It's different programs and different opportunities that the U.S. has to work with a partner nation. Everything from foreign military sales to foreign military funding to
Mhm.
international military education and training. So these are all incredibly important programs for our partner nations in the integration and development. So if I'm in Colombia now, and say we have this case study where we actually need to work cooperatively in the information environment. So my office would do an assessment, and let's say it was on riverine boats. We do an
Mhm.
assessment and we find a way. Okay, how are we going to coordinate with the Colombian Navy or the Colombian Marine Corps when we're working in
Mhm.
the riverine environment? So we'll make an
Sure.
assessment. We'll figure out what programs, what kind of hardware we would need to in order to work interoperably, and then we would
Mhm.
go ahead and find a way to finance that, whether the host nation actually buys the equipment from the United States, or whether
Mhm.
we actually do fund programs so that our partners have the capability to work with us. So that's just an example of the impact that we have to ensure that these partners around the world, that we're able to work with them closely, that we're able to do strategic operations and strategic work in the operational environment.
So in terms of we were talking about that security cooperation, what does that mean, especially in terms of your job and interaction
Uh,
with the Colombian Navy? How much of your time are you spending out, kind of like in the field, interacting and cooperating with, Colombian military leadership? And then
yeah.
specifically in this role, like what is the United States relationship with the Colombian Navy and what initiatives are you guys working on?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. I think it's a great one, and I work with the Colombian Navy every single day, nearly every day that I'm living here in Bogota, Colombia. In fact, I have an office. I'm completely embedded with the Colombian Navy. My office is in the Fortaleza. The Fortaleza is basically the Colombians' version of the Pentagon. So when I go to work every day, I show up at the Fortaleza. I have an office there. That's where my staff works. And every day I am certainly communicating with the Colombian Navy, if not, having meetings. So I meet with everybody from really the chief of the Colombian Navy all the way down. I mean, for my level, I usually go work with fellow O6s. That's kind of,
Mhm.
as the Naval Mission Chief, I'm kind of like at the flag officer O6 level. That's where I do a lot of my coordination, kind of at the
Mhm.
decision making level.
Sure.
But the officers in my office, they will work with everybody in the Colombian Navy who is tasked with, you know, taking advantage of our programs or coordinating with us in order to make sure the appropriate programs are programmed. Yeah, it's a unique environment. It's something that is, if again, if you have that itch to be working in a foreign land, speaking a
Mhm.
language that might not be your first language. Spanish definitely isn't my first language, and really interacting on a human level with our partner nations, that's what we do.
Yeah, that's so cool. Into the language piece. Now, because that
Yeah.
was gonna be my follow-up is if you're quite literally engaging daily with Colombian military leadership, like, I'm sure a lot of that is done in Spanish. So, like, what is the language part of this program, and how does the
Mhm.
Navy prepare you to go there? Like, you're just to like, it's not like you become a FAO and they just send you to Colombia on day 1, right? Like,
Right.
what's kind of the process in the schooling pipeline when it comes to this program to get you ready to be doing what you're doing?
Yeah. So in the Navy, and specifically for the foreign area officer community, it's not something that you can service select right out of the Naval Academy or
Mhm.
right out of your commissioning source.
Right.
So the foreign area officer community is looking for, at a bare minimum, 4 to 5 years of service. And your best
Mhm.
opportunity, if you think you're interested in this type of career field, is to have that be warfare designator service. So coming from the surface warfare community, the submarine community, the aviation community, of course, those communities will have to agree to let you go into the foreign area officer community. And I don't with lateral transfers, it's kind of a dance on how you do that, and it has to do with your year group and how our overall manning in the Navy is fleshed out. But the soonest opportunity is at 4 or 5 years. Really, the sweet spot, because we're looking at with we really want people who have a sound foundational understanding of what the Navy is, what it is we do, what our
Mhm.
platforms are, because at the end of the day, we do end up, especially in security cooperation, servicing
Mhm.
programs that, maybe for acquisition of aircraft. I mean, So it's
Sure.
really important to have a good, solid understanding of the community, warfare community where you came from. So a real
Sure.
sweet spot is approaching the 10-year mark. But what happens is we have, in fact, we have one out right now. We have a call for lateral transfer or call for
Mm.
applications. You take the DLAB, the Defense Language Aptitude Battery, and we're looking
Okay.
for a score of 110. If you're around the 110 mark, then you're probably going to be a good candidate to be able to learn and pick up a foreign language. And then really looking for the right personality or for, people who have kind of the characteristics of having the audacity and the interest of living overseas, of
Sure.
working with our partner nations, of building those relationships. And there's a board that will meet. It's usually chaired by a '06 foreign area officer, such as myself. And then
Mm.
there'll be maybe an '04 and '05 on the board, generally chaired by three people who are foreign area officers. And they go ahead and they screen the candidates and they select they have a rating system. And it just really depends on every time we have the call for lateral transfer. It happens twice a year. And
Mhm.
yeah, that's how they're selected. So the training pipeline, so if you say you're a classic SWO or aviator candidate, you get selected to
Mhm.
be a foreign area officer, then generally, like the typical pipeline of what we do is the Navy will send you to get your master's degree if you don't already have it. And we like to have a international relations based master's degree. Typically,
Mhm.
it's at NPS or the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey.
Yep.
And because the Defense Language Institute is also located in Monterey, it just makes it very smooth transition. You'll be assigned a region, you'll get your master's degree at NPS, and then you'll get your language training. If you're going to be assigned to the Middle East, for example, you'll probably get Arabic. Clearly somebody who is going to be assigned to Southcom like I am, you'll get your Spanish. And then
Mhm.
from there, once you have those things, the international relations master's degree, once you have your language aptitude, and the score or the way we test for language aptitude is
Yeah.
by taking the DLPT or the Defense Language Proficiency Test. And at
Mhm.
a bare minimum, we are looking for people who score a 2-2. So that's 2 in listening comprehension and a 2 in reading comprehension. But
Yeah.
really, when you get down range, we want you to kind of get a little more proficient than what a 2-2 provides. A 2-2 is pretty good, but really to get really have a understanding to start to get that fluency, we're looking for people to screen at 3-3.
3-3.
Yeah.
Yeah, couple questions before we move to the next spot. You mentioned the term DLAB,
Yes.
which is like the language aptitude test.
Yes.
How is like the Nate or like the military determining your aptitude to
Yeah.
learn a language? Like what does the test consist of?
Yes.
And then kind of with that is, are you putting in preferences to like work a specific region or learn a specific language? Like what is the difference between your performance on your aptitude to learn a language versus your preference of a region you want to go to?
Boy, you're asking probing questions here, but I like them. So thanks for asking those, Grant. Yeah, so this is open source, but when you take the Defense Language Aptitude Battery, what
Yep.
it is it's kind of made up languages where the military is testing you of
Mhm.
how well you could potentially, how well your brain functions with the
Mhm.
potential of picking up a language. So it's
Mhm.
really a gibberish languages that you'll be exposed to. You'll be listening, you might be reading something, but yeah, there's kind of no way to study for it because it's
Sure.
really testing, your aptitude or your potential to learn a language. So the
Yep.
DLAB, while it's important, it apparently is a great measurement or a great tool to
Sure.
kind of realize how well you will pick up a language. So if you
Yeah.
score a really high score on the DLAB,
Mhm.
you might be pegged or you might be earmarked to be stationed to the or assigned to the Middle East because Arabic is a very difficult language to pick up as a second language,
Sure.
or maybe even Eastern Europe, Russia, another strategic language, or for China,
Mhm.
if you don't have exposure to Mandarin, that would be something that you would be looked for. But I love your question because at the end of the day, it's the needs of the
Mhm.
Navy. Where does the
Sure.
Navy need more foreign area officers? So,
Mhm.
without having had a deep discussion with our detailer, I would say the Indo-Pacific region is a
Mhm.
hotbed of where we really kind of need foreign area officers right now.
Sure.
But you never know, like things change. That's why we have FAOs around the world who work in the seams, because
Hmm.
especially when you consider strategic competition, where are our strategic competitors, mainly China and Russia, where are they exerting their influence? It's everywhere.
Yeah,
It's around the
sure.
world. That's why we have FAOs stationed around the world.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's super interesting because when we talk about like regions now, like again, kind of this whole process, you talk about Southcom, a region where
Mm,
there are multiple countries that speak the same language. Besides
mm,
Brazil, every
right.
country in South America is a Spanish-speaking country. But if we're talking about Indo-PACOM or the Indo-Pacific, like there are countries that do not speak the same language at all. So, like,
Probably
do you get
thousands. Yeah.
like, do you get pigeonholed to, again, just a region? Like, how do you go from region to language, if that makes
Mhm.
sense? And then, like, actually specified what language you're going to be learning and what country you're going to be supporting.
Yeah, again, at the end of the day, and the foreign area officer community really does try to detail or assign their FAOs to the language and region that they are trained up on. But at the end of the day, the needs of the Navy win out. And that kind
Sure.
of brings me to the third LOE or line of effort that I really didn't go into
Mhm.
discussing, and that is
Sure.
fleet and major staff. So this is the third role that FAOs serve. That's actually a
Mhm.
very critical, I would sometimes argue, could potentially be the most critical line of effort that we serve in, because that's
Yeah.
how we influence our senior leaders. That's how we influence people like the Chief of Naval Operations, the VCNO,
Mhm.
all the staff. That's at the OPNAV level. But
Yeah.
going into the fleets, where your fleet commanders are the ones that are really in charge of operations, the foreign area officers oftentimes are their N5s. So they're the
Sure.
ones that are specifically charged with advising them strategically. And it's such an exciting role. I mean,
Yeah.
if you haven't
Mhm.
noticed, I really love what I do, and I love what Thayas
Yeah.
do. We're so vital to how the Navy functions today, being a global force, and especially in the strategic competition environment. We are the
Mm.
glue that kind of ties our tactics and our operations to what our leaders want us to do strategically. That's
Sure.
what Theos do. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so cool because it's even more than language, which I
Yes.
think is really interesting because
Yes.
you're not just like you're not a translator.
No.
You're there to understand the culture and be an advisor to the staff, right? Like whether that be with the security cooperation and engagement with like actual Colombian Navy or as an advisor to Southcom, right? Or
Yes.
the admirals or
Yes.
the
Yes.
staff. And so can you talk a little bit on like the actual cultural immersion piece of the FAO program and how again FAO's just talking about like all the cool opportunities and jobs you do through the FAO training pipeline and process to
Yeah.
get an understanding of regions on top of like your language training.
Sure, sure. And again, going back to your last question, just to kind of put a bow on it.
Yeah,
So we
perfect.
really do try to focus on a specific region, but we're just about to break into this new concept of where we'll have a major region and a minor region.
Okay.
So it gives us the flexibility to specialize in more than one region. And if you look at
Mm,
my career, I mean, I have served in the U.S. Fifth Fleet in Bahrain.
okay.
I was the NAVCENT liaison officer at the U.S. Embassy there. So I have experience, in the Middle East. But my
Sure.
language is Spanish, and I'm serving in Colombia now. So really,
Mhm,
I think Colombia is going to be my major region. But
sure.
to make things even more interesting, if you will, as a reservist, and we didn't even talk about this. I'm on active duty now.
Mhm.
I forgot to mention that. So I'm a very unique I'm a very unique specimen here of my life and my career. But I did
Mhm,
manage to go back onto permanent active duty, and actually next December, not this December, but next December, I will have completed my 20 years total of active duty service, even though I've been commissioned for it'll be 27 years by then. But
really.
as a reservist, thank you. As a reservist, I served as a Africa Regional Foreign Area
Oh,
Officer. So
hmm,
yeah, this concept of regions, I don't want to get the conversation too bogged down on being specialized in a region, but you're right. We do have programs where we learn about our regions. One of them is through the George Washington Elliott School. We have a
mhm,
wonderful opportunity where we really get to study, and we get to speak to experts from our regions, professors, people from think tanks, and we take
mhm,
about 5 days, roughly a week, where we kind of do a deep dive on our region and what the issues are and how they might apply to our own country or more broadly to the region that we're assigned to.
Mm,
Another way is something we call in-region training. It is part of the training pipeline. It's not guaranteed that you'll be able to do it, but
mhm,
if there's room within your your career path, you might be assigned, for example, somebody who would be coming to Colombia might get an assignment in Chile and get to, practice their Spanish in Chile, kind of get it exposed to a different country in the region. And then they might
mhm.
ultimately end up, at the US military group in Bogota. So
Sure.
we're kind of hitting on another characteristic of being a foreign area officer that I love, which is continual learning. We are
Mhm.
continual learners. We are constantly encouraged and exposed to opportunities and programs where we
Yeah.
really stretch our minds, where we really stretch our intellect, but it's all centered around strategic understanding of what the Navy is doing in our global environments around the world.
Sure. And in terms of all this, again, continual learning, and again, a lot of that is through this immersion and being there. And
Yeah.
so when we're talking about like your actual life impact, for lack of a better term, what's kind of, again, we talk in the Navy a lot of the sea shore rotation, right? You spend
Yeah.
time out to sea, but then you come home. As a FAO, are you spending time back home in the United States, or are you quite
Yeah.
literally like hopping from Bahrain to Colombia to Chile, and you're in a constant, almost like State Department type lifestyle where you're just
Yeah.
abroad always? Like, what's that situation and dynamic like?
The great thing about the Navy and the great thing about the FAO community is that we really strive to kind of marry up the different opportunities and job openings that happen with the needs of our officers who are serving. So
Mhm,
I'll give you an example. I am in Bogota with my family. I have two young boys, a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, and my husband is down here. And my husband he's able to work remotely, the 3 years that we're here in Colombia. And we are actually applying for an assignment that is in Santiago, Chile. So
okay.
this is something that we are choosing to do partially,
Mhm,
quite frankly, for our family to give our boys the exposure of, really getting a solid foundation of Spanish as their second language.
sure.
So, and it happens career wise, that would be a very good career step for me, aside from it being something that I'm really interested in. But generally, we do have opportunities where if you serve a tour down range and you want to get yourself to the United States, you and your family, or just yourself, it's just
Mhm,
yourself. We
sure.
do we do have billets that are, for example, at Fourth Fleet, at Third Fleet, at
Mhm,
the Pentagon, with OPNAV. We have
okay.
a lot of billets there with NIPO, which is Navy International Programs Office, which is in the DC area. We have Stratcom, Tramscom. I mean, you name it, we've got positions and openings where we can
Okay.
get you back to the United States.
That's so cool. And so along that path, kind of, steering this discussion a little bit into the career paths and options for FAOs. What are you use this term billet, right? Like your job role or responsibility. What's the career progression factors when it comes to a FAO? Are you in the same role as an O4 as you would be as an O6? Like, what are the progressions? Do you progress through regions? Like, what does someone look at when
Yeah.
you become a FAO? Are you capping at O6, or are there flag officers that are FAOs? Kind of like, what's the career outlook as a FAO moving through this program?
Yeah, so generally, if you become a FAO, you're generally going to transition at the senior O3, O4 level.
Yep.
And what's interesting about our career field is you could serve, for example, I'm a SCO chief, is another name for what I do as the Naval Mission
Mhm.
Chief. There are SCO chiefs that are O4s. There are SCO
Sure.
chiefs that are O5s, but Colombia is a huge partner nation for the United States. That's why my job is billeted as an O6 position.
Okay.
So, but we do have to answer your question, we do have stratification as far as a milestone billets, milestone
Mhm.
tours. And
Sure.
so when you are an O4, O5, you need to screen into an O5 milestone billet, and there's actually a board that meets and decides of the O5 FAOs who is going to screen and make the cut so that they'll be assigned to a milestone billet. And those are more robust. There's more responsibilities in those positions. Uh, and so once you graduate into the milestone billets, hopefully you'll do well. Then you have the future potential for advancement,
Mhm.
and then we have O6 billets, which are just for O6s to fill.
Okay.
So our billets are stratified by the level of officer that you are, by your pay grade,
Sure.
basically.
Hmm. Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Like, it's helpful. I love it. Again, I think this is like super fun as people are like, like not even knowing this may be an opportunity. And it's like, what does this like mean for me? How do I progress and advance and do all those things, which is so cool. But
Yeah.
I am just going to bring it back just a tiny bit because I
Mhm.
got so excited. We've moved this discussion in so many ways.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, right in the situation, I was starting to ask about the D lab because I was going to move
Mhm.
into eventually the language training.
Okay.
Uh, for that, how much language training are you actually receiving by the Navy? Right? Like
Yeah.
when you get this, like how much language are you actually learning and what's the pipeline to specifically learn your language?
Okay. And again, great questions, Grant, that you're asking. And this might be an opportunity to open up the conversation a little more.
Mhm,
Not everybody gets language training. Now, great example is I
mhm,
am in the Southcom region. We have
sure.
actually, there's a lot of people, actually, of my 3 officers who are in my office, all of
Mhm,
them are native language Spanish speakers. I'm the only
mm,
one who is native language English. So
okay.
they didn't need language training. I mean,
Sure.
they already spoke Spanish. When I crossed over, and this is a little a distinguisher for the Navy Reserve career field.
Mhm,
Before you become a FAO, you have to reach that 2-2 on the DLPT. You have to
okay.
be a foreign language speaker on the reserve side before you can redesignate to foreign area officer.
Mm,
Now, but on the active duty side, it's completely different. We are looking
okay.
to take those warfare designators and to train them to become foreign area officers. So the
Okay.
primary means that we do that is by sending them to the Defense Language Institute, which I mentioned before in Monterey, so that and hopefully get the officer up to the minimum bar of 2-2,
Mhm,
the trying to get them the aspirational score of getting a
mhm.
3-3. And I think the highest you can get is something like a 4-4, if I'm not mistaken. So, but I mean, we're talking about a very, very hard test
Sure.
that, I mean, if you speak a 4-4, you're pretty much completely
Yeah,
fluent. Yeah.
native. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're pretty much native, but
Yeah.
yeah. So
In that time in Monterey, like when we're talking about the time at NPS plus DLI, is this
yeah.
a 1 year time frame? Is this a 2 year time frame? What's the rough like
Yeah.
time commitment there?
Generally, it's a 1-year program to get your master's degree, and
Mhm,
then after that, depending so Spanish, for example, if it's still the way it's a 6-month, as I understand, DLI program.
mhm,
Again, I didn't learn
okay,
Spanish at DLI. I learned
sure.
it in Spain. I called it a self-imposed immersion. That's how I learned it. But, yeah, I think Spanish is 6 months, but you can get up to, like, I think up to 18 months, and again, that's the, like,
Yep.
Mandarin, the Russian,
Vietnamese, yeah, Russian, yeah.
yeah, the Farsi, like,
Mhm,
so it depends on I would imagine French might get a little more than 6 months. Maybe French
sure.
would get 9 months, but that's what dictates like the complexity of the language and probably baseline English. How hard is it for somebody to learn, this, but the minimum is 6 months.
Mhm. And what happens what happens if you don't reach a 2-2, right? Like, what happens if you go through this process and you can't do it?
I have known foreign area officers who just like really struggled with that language piece.
Yeah,
And to be quite frank, I don't, the individual I'm thinking of never made it beyond O4. And,
okay.
sometimes, that's, sometimes that happens, but there's opportunity. The community will really, we have what's called the language and, gosh, it's called the LREC, the language region and
Mhm.
education and culture.
Education,
Yeah.
culture. Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
we have a whole component designed to
Mhm.
assist FAOs with
Okay.
their language and with their cultural development. And in fact, I am one where I have, after a year living in Bogota, and I told you I am not a native language speaker, not a native Spanish speaker. I did have my tutu when I arrived here.
Yeah.
After a year, I scored a 3.2 plus. So you see a progression. I live here now, so I speak a lot more Spanish than I did, when I was back in the United States.
Sure.
But I am taking tutoring to improve specifically my speaking, my Spanish language
Mhm.
speaking.
Sure.
So a lot of the resources that are available to you as a FAO, they are individual motivational based. But I really, and knowing that I very well might stay downrange, I
Yeah.
really want to improve my Spanish. I'm invested. And
Yep.
funnily enough, that is one of the indicators that will kind of almost virtually guarantee that you'll improve in your language skills is your personal
Sure.
motivation.
Hmm.
So yeah, if you see it, if you seek it, they will come. No,
Yeah.
if you build it, they will come.
If you build it, they'll come.
Yeah,
100%.
if you think it, and if you aspire,
You're gonna manifest it.
the
Yeah,
the resources
100%.
are there to make it happen. Yeah,
That's awesome. What's funny is I wish I kind of knew about this when I was in the Navy. Like that would have been pretty fun and cool. Like again, what's funny is I literally took 45 days of leave in transit when I was leaving my first command to my shore tour, and I went down to Colombia and I spent literally 45 days in Medellin, like
yeah,
taking Spanish lessons from like 8 a.m. to noon, and then like just going out and talking to people and making friends and just trying to like improve my Spanish because I always had this like deep interest in like wanting to learn another language and kind of immerse myself and get another cultural understanding. And I was like, dang, the Navy could have paid me to do that.
yeah,
what,
yeah.
what am I doing?
And Grant, that's exactly why I'm so happy that you're having me on today, because I want to get the word out that this is a career field. We have, I think, now around 450 officers on
Oh,
active duty. Like this is, if you can think and I am not surprised with your career background that you might be interested in doing this. We need to get the word out that it is such a vitally important, and we need to recruit top talent into this career
mhm,
field because what
sure.
we do is so important in that relationship building and the working with
Mhm,
the partner nations and the working with our senior leaders on the Navy and senior staff and
mhm,
helping them with their strategic problems, especially in the light of strategic competition and how we're going to kind of navigate the waters ahead.
sure. Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And I think it's so cool. And I love that we're doing this. And now to tackle a couple of for lack of a better term, some of the logistic questions, right? As people are like planning this and thinking if this is for them. And again, like, what if I do it and I love it, but like I have a family and they don't like being overseas all the time? Like, what is the service obligation that comes with being a FAO, right? I assume most people who choose this path are like, I'm excited about this and I want to make a career of it.
Yes,
But what happens if life situations changes? Like at what point are they like how much of the service obligation is mandated, I'll put it that way, for
right.
going through this program?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. So we do kind of adhere to the education and training. So for graduate education, you have a year of graduate school. I think it's like 2 for 1. So
Mhm.
1 year would make a 2 year obligation on the back end. Of course,
Yep.
with the language training, you would add that onto it. So yeah, if it's just something that doesn't work out for you, you would work with your detailer and you would work with the
Mhm.
community manager, and you would probably just signal to them, hey, I'm not sure that this is something that I foresee me and my family, or just myself, just me
Sure.
doing in the long term. Are there any off ramps? And fortunately, now there is an off ramp, and that is to go into the reserve foreign area
Mm,
officer community. But
okay.
Grant, your question actually reminded me of something that I wanted to make sure that I brought up during our conversation, and
Mhm.
that is the SWO to FAO TCT, which
Yep.
stands for Tailored Career Transition. It is a
Okay.
relatively new program. We've had it for about a year and a half now. And it is I think, a fabulous opportunity for our surface warfare officers who
Yeah.
screen for department head to kind of tee up a career if they think they're interested in being a foreign area officer, where they
Mhm.
can select to become a department head, get that department head bonus, get that leadership experience of serving as a department head. What
Mhm.
happens is in the transition between their first and second department head tour, what we do if they're selected for this program is we train them to become a foreign area officer. So during that break is when we send them to NPS to get the graduate degree if they don't already
Mhm.
have it. We send them to DLI to get their language training so that they will have it. We get them that exposure to the community. And so after they serve their second department head tour, once they're done with that, then they lateral transfer into the foreign area officer community. So
Mhm.
I have got a couple notes here. I just want to describe like how you would
Sure.
apply for this
Yep.
TCT program. So first of all, you must be screened for department head.
Mhm.
You must be TSSCI eligible. You must have a minimum score on that DLAB that we talked about, the defense language aptitude battery of 110. 110 is the marker of what we're looking for to select you as competitive, or having the capability to learn that foreign language. And then the final thing that you must do is is pass an interview that's chaired by an O6 foreign area officer.
Okay.
So after you complete those series of those steps, then
Hmm.
basically the surface warfare community has agreed that they will allow you to stay on board, complete your
Hmm.
department head tours, get that excellent leadership exposure, that opportunity. Because, and I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but I did tell you I work with the Colombian Navy every single
Yeah.
day. Every single
Yeah.
day here, I work with the Colombian
So
Navy.
sweet.
But the people who I really connect with are it should not be a surprise, are the surface warfare officers. Because
Hmm.
when I go in and I wear my surface warfare officer pin, they
Yeah.
know, where I came from. They know that I've served aboard ships. They know that I've stood the watches. So, like,
Yep.
those are the people who are naturally like my people. Now, of course, I work
Hmm.
with aviators too, and I work with submariners too. But it's really those SWOs that I really have a close bond with, and
Hmm.
it's not by happenstance. It's because
Yeah.
we served in the same capacity. So yeah, again, the foundation of having that warfare experience.
Yeah.
While now and a disclaimer here, we do have
Yeah.
some intel officers that lateral transfer into FAO, and they're
Sure.
excellent. They're wonderful. Okay, and we do
Yeah.
have people
No
like
shade to us information warfare
yeah,
types. Yeah, you'd be okay. Yeah.
so we do we do. However, yeah, it's knowing the Navy, having the
Mhm.
experience of serving in, to a certain extent, the more that you have, that more,
Mhm.
especially those leadership jobs like department head, they're just screaming like you know what you're talking about, like you've earned your salt, right? So yeah,
Yeah. Classic SWO response.
I know
Yeah.
you can't get it out of me. You can't get it out of me.
Oh, I love it. But no, actually, just a super quick interjection too. When you talk about working with the Colombian Navy, just to provide again an example of what you do in your current job, like what are the initiatives that the United States is working with the Colombian Navy on? Like, is it counter narcotics, counterterrorism? Like, what is like the mission of what the United States is doing in Colombia right
Yeah, well, those are 2 missions that are, like, front and center in Colombia.
now?
It's kind of a like, when in Rome, that's what you're gonna be concerned about. But we're also so there was a program in Colombia specifically called Plan Colombia. It was an interagency program. It lasted from roughly, I think, 2001 to 2011 and beyond, if you will,
Mhm.
and that was specifically counter narcotics focused. But, we've evolved beyond Plan Colombia, but
Mhm.
I would think it would be disingenuous to say that, "Oh, I'm in the naval mission, I don't care about counter narcotics." I mean, that's just
Sure.
not true because you know what?
Mhm.
The Colombians care about counter narcotics. The Colombian Navy cares about counter narcotics. So, of course, that's gonna be something that is front and center on,
Mhm.
our collaboration together.
Sure.
However, from the US Navy side, from the US military side, strategic competition is
Mhm.
super important to us. So what we
Sure.
do is like you kind of get that Venn diagram and you see, okay, these are the Colombian Navy's, important things. These are very front and center considerations that they're tackling, issues they're tackling every day. And then we
Mhm.
get the US Navy and what we're concerned about. And you look at where we are positioned globally, geostrategically, maybe there's a certain characteristic about Colombia.
Mhm.
It's maybe near, it's bicoastal.
Yeah.
We've got the Caribbean and we've got the Pacific.
Right.
So
Mhm.
those are the U.S. interests, and really where those two circles converge, that center
Mhm.
spot. That really is where the magic happens. That's where our collaboration really serves the purpose of why we're here. And
Sure.
so that's what we again we work in the themes. We try to find where those commonalities are, and we
Mhm.
focus on what we can do about it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's so darn cool. And the I guess kind of like the last piece is if someone were like trying to brainstorm this out and they're trying to figure this out of like what this decision means in my life, not just 4 years from now, but 20 years from now. What are some of the common or normal exit plans for most FAOs? Like do they go work
Oh,
for the state department? Do they go work in politics? Like has there been like kind of a pipeline like people see like oh, I know like being a FAO is going to give me the experience I need to, take an ambassador role to
yeah.
hopefully in the future, right? Like, what are some of these common trends you see with people like once they retire from the Navy, kind of what the next phase is for them? after this program?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you hit two obvious ones there. So, State Department is definitely something that foreign area officers, they might decide that they're really, really into the interagency. In fact, they want to
Sure.
be,
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
other side
they
of the
like
interagency.
they like the three-letter agency integration and having fun. Yeah, no,
and
that's cool.
and that's fine. Another one is, continued public service, and I think I would like to see more of us, elect to serve in public service, whether it's an elected position or not. Um, Another thing that foreign area officers do once they get out of, if they retire, if they get out of the service, is they might work for an industry, and they might work for, one of the big contractors, or they might actually work for a shipbuilding company or something, and they have absolutely very highly sought after specific skill sets that they can transfer into industry. So it's really, the sky's the limit. There are so many things
Yeah,
that you can do with the skills that you need to be a foreign area officer.
so cool. Well, thank you. And just to kind of like phase this to the last kind of portion of our discussion,
Yeah.
which I really want to almost tailor directly to a lot of the midshipmen specifically,
Okay.
right? If someone's listening out there and there's like a midshipman's like, holy crud, like I had no idea one, this is even an option or like a possibility for me in the future or something of the sort, right? In that discussion to a midshipman who may be interested in a FAO program, what would you tell them to consider, and like what advice would you give them to maximize their chance of taking advantage of an opportunity like this, and what is in their control,
Right.
as a midshipman and going into their young junior officer career to put themselves in a spot to be like, oh yeah, like no, I know I would love to put myself in a spot to become a FAO at some point.
That's a great question, and I want to say I actually was at the Naval Academy back in September. We have a biannual cornerstone event where O5s and O6 FAOs and above. And
Mhm,
you're reminding me, you asked me earlier about our flag officers, and I did
mhm,
want to mention and give a
yeah,
shout out to our community. We are very proud. We just had our third one-star named. It was
let's
selected
go.
in a board last week. It's
Mm,
Captain Rayo, and so he's a Rear Admiral Select. We're very proud. It's the first time ever that the foreign area officer community for the Navy has had three one-star flag officers. So
wow,
if you're interested in reaching flag, you can do it
mhm,
as a foreign area
sure.
officer. So I want to put that out there. The
Mhm,
second thing I wanted, what I started to talk about being at the Naval Academy, I was just there. The Secretary of the Navy had symposium there in September, and I actually got to have lunch with squad from 15th Company, and it was super fun for me to do this. I got to be like the head of the table. But
yeah,
the the Naval Academy now is much more international programs focused than it was
mhm,
when I was a midshipman. And I think it is absolutely for the better. I think it's the better
mhm,
for the Naval Academy, the better for our midshipmen, the better for our naval officers. And so I would advise, and so I've met a few midshipmen who are super interested in
yeah,
potentially becoming a FAO down the road. So my
mhm,
advice to them is knowing that we need people who have that operational experience, that fleet experience before they lateral transfer in. So
mhm,
you don't commission and become a FAO. You have to, you have to. I advise them to follow their heart and
yeah,
do which, if that's going submarines, then go submarines. If that's
sure.
being in aviation, and in aviation, you're going to have a longer career training path, and
Mhm,
then mid-career you become a FAO. In fact, we have specific FAO billets that are for aviators,
hmm,
because we have aircraft. Not in every country, but Colombia has aircraft here. We have C-12s, and in
mhm,
order for our senior defense official and for our attaches to get around the country in the more remote areas, then we have FAOs who dual hat as also pilots for those aircraft, and they fly them.
wait, it's
So
for real?
yes,
Oh, that's sweet.
we have FAO billets just for aviators. So please, if you
Oh,
do
that's
want to
tight.
fly, go fly. Keep in the back of your head. Oh, but I might be a FAO too. Like keep that in
Yeah,
mind. But
yeah,
go be a pilot first. Go, be a surface warfare officer. Go
mhm,
be a Navy SEAL. Do
sure,
that, and realize that if you're approaching, around your 10-year mark, and you think, you know what, this has been great, which is quite frankly what I did
yeah,
as a public affairs officer. I did it for a little over 10 years, and I thought, it's been great, but I'm kind of interested in doing something else.
mhm.
think about the foreign area officer career
Yeah.
because it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's just it's an incredible career opportunity, and yeah, I love
Yeah.
it. I love it, Grant.
It's so cool. And so just to emphasize, because I know there may be some people who listen to you talk about this SWO to FAO
Yeah,
specific program.
yeah.
Is there any data to show or support kind of, what people may be drawing a conclusion like, oh, since there's a tailored program for this, like I have the best chance if I go SWO? Like your kind of advice here is really just do what you want to do in your warfare community and there will be opportunity.
Yeah, that is my advice, and we don't have the data yet, but I'm sure that we're eagerly waiting to collect it. I again, just from understanding the program and the opportunity it provides, especially from the
Mhm.
leadership side and working as a department head on a ship, I see immense potential for those post department head foreign area officers of
Mhm.
rising up to those flag ranks. I see the potential, and I won't be surprised at all if it's one of that first batch that we have who's one of our future flag officers. It wouldn't surprise me in the least.
So cool. Last piece.
Okay.
Kind of your story specifically is going from a reservist
Yes.
back to a foreign area officer. And so
Yeah.
I give you an opportunity to address like if there are any reservists like listening in to this program
Yeah.
for whatever reason, they're like, oh my gosh, like I didn't consider this. What would your advice be, or what factors would you tell a reservist to consider, whether that be becoming like a reservist FAO or the like switch back to active duty to become a FAO? Like
Yeah.
what
I
do you have there?
I appreciate the question. The
Yeah.
backstory for me is that after I left active duty, after 12 and a half
Mhm.
years, which is a little bit unusual, but some people do it,
Sure.
after about 18 months, I realized that I missed active duty and I wanted to go back. But what I didn't know is that there really isn't a path to go back onto active duty. So, how did I do it?
Mhm.
Well, this was a journey for me that lasted almost 10 years in order to get back on active duty.
Mhm.
And this is something that now that I'm an '06 and I'm on the technical term is called an indefinite recall, which I think is a misnomer because it makes it sound like I'm still a reservist, but I'm not. I'm back on full on active duty. There's a
Mhm.
few select people who have been
Yeah.
able to basically, to put it in layman's terms, it was determined that we had so much skill for the Navy that the Navy needed
Yeah.
that they created an opportunity for us to go back onto active duty. But it is not a normal pipeline. It's not like a program out there like the TMT where yes, this is something feasible for you. So my call out to the Navy, my call out to our leadership, to the VCNO, to our personnel, to the chief of personnel. I firmly believe, and this is Suzanna Brugler speaking, so let's get that out there. But I think to best service our Navy and to best service especially our Gen Zers,
Uh-huh.
even our millennials. I think
Sure.
we need to create a more fluid opportunity to on ramp back into active duty after you have
Mhm.
chosen to leave. And
Sure.
Grant, thank you for allowing me to give a plug for that because
Yeah.
it's really something that I am really dedicated to trying to make a change because I really think it's the right thing for our Navy and capturing the talents that the Navy has already invested in. So
Mhm.
again, that's Susanna Brugler's little idea.
Little plug.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. Well, perfect. This has been so darn fun of a conversation. I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
I didn't get to drink my water, but I wanted to show here that I have this alongside and
The little Naval Academy mug. I love
yeah,
it, which is actually kind of the switch back to the final piece, which is something I ask everyone who comes on the podcast as well, which is why should young men and women, again, because we do have a little bit of an audience of individuals who are in high school, so are just interested in the academy, trying to learn more about it. Like, what's your recruiting pitch? Why should young men and women consider a service academy education? Like, why are these things great?
great question. If you were like me as a high school student or as a teenager and you're dreaming what it is that you want to do with your life, I wanted to do something extraordinary with my life. I knew that when I was young. I was driven to doing something out of the ordinary. But
Mhm.
what I have found serving in the Navy has made my life beyond extraordinary. So you can't dream big enough of the opportunities that would be presented to you if you go to a service academy. And if you have any doubts, just give me a call and let's have like a 10-minute conversation. And I'm pretty sure you'll change your mind in the end.
I love it. I love it. Well, genuinely, for anyone listening, if you shoot me a message here on Academy Insider, I'll get you connected to Suzanna, and we can have those conversations again. I think what's beautiful, it's something I talk about a lot, is this power of the Service Academy network, and it's so much more than just business deals or whatever. It's kindness. It's open doors to have conversations with people who have been so positively impacted by this experience that we want to get back and share that with the next wave of individuals who have that curiosity or interest in like pursuing in these same paths, right? And so,
Thank you for
uh,
doing this, Grant, because
oh, it's so
this
cool.
is you. This is what you've built. I love this network, and just thank you.
No, of course, it's my pleasure. Y pues, gracias por estar aquí con
Ah,
nosotros y compartir tu historia and
con
everything
gusto.
of the FAO program. This is so darn cool. Is there anything you have left or want to leave with the Academy Insider audience before we wrap up?
No, I think we've covered it, but it's been a sheer pleasure. Con
Oh,
gusto. I think you have to come back and visit us in Bogota next time, okay?
uh, I'm coming. You better watch out. Like that's an invitation. I will take up. I've yet
Absolutely.
to be to Bogota, and I would love to do it. So stand
Okay.
by for that. Watch out, I'm coming. But I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And to the Academy Insider audience, reach out with any questions. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much.
Okay. Ciao.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Academy Insider podcast. I really hope you liked it, enjoyed it, and learned something during this time. If you did, please feel free to like and subscribe or leave a comment about the episode. We really appreciate to hear your feedback about everything and continue to make Academy Insider an amazing service that guides, serves, and supports midshipmen, future midshipmen, and their families. Thank you.